Who doesn't dream about being a movie star? They're confident, sexy, happy, and brave. But it's all pure illusion. Or is it? It's evening in London. Socialite Rita Simmons is parking her car. When suddenly,
hey!
This was not a movie. There weren't any cameras, but Rita Simmons would be rescued by action movie star
Tom Cruise?
But that's not the only time Tom Cruise would rescue someone in real life. He's done it on at least 5 different occasions, and he's not the only one. While you were just watching, Tom Cruise acted his way to being a real-life hero, happier, more in love, and more confident. But what if I told you there's new emerging science that says,
hello, you could do the same thing?
We've been told that positive thinking can change us. But you could probably change your life far more by simply acting happier, acting more confident, acting brave, and even acting in love, just like a movie star. Because it might not be what you think, it's how you act. My name is Albert Nerenberg, and I work as a laughologist. My job is to get groups of people to laugh, but I don't do it the conventional way. I just use laughter. But one day, this happened.
Hey! This is all fake!
Actually, that guy was right. This form of laughter exercise works by initially acting the behavior, which then triggers something real. But that incident caused me to make a strange connection. Could we act our way to other things? Case in point, it would appear that actor Tom Cruise has become the very thing he plays in movies. A valiant, action-based hero, arriving in the nick of time, as in this scene from Mission Impossible 3. Is it simply coincidence, or is it possible that, like Tom Cruise, if you act something enough, you become it? This has been famously observed by poets. Act the way you'd like to be, and soon you'll be the way you act, said Leonard Cohen. And by actors.
When you play a part, do you then take on that part when you're no longer playing? So if you're no longer in the play or in the movie, or you've taken off that guise in your home and you're not standing like Wonder Woman or whomever, does it, in a sense, infuse who you become?
Does this apply to the rest of us? It's been said that we are what we eat, but are we what we act? There's finally emerging science in many domains that says it's extremely possible. This is Professor Lawrence Staines. He was stunned by the range of research showing that personal changes are possible by faking or acting your way to be something else. He added them all up in a groundbreaking article for Men's Health magazine.
There is power in fakery, yes. It's not all powerful, but I think that the idea of faking it till you make it has some power.
Staines was amazed by the broad range of human endeavors where faking it changes people for the better. Faking confidence, happiness, extroversion, youthfulness, and even laughter has its advantages. Generally speaking, we don't like fake things. That's why it's hard to see that a certain side of fakery might have tremendous power. Here's the idea. If you want to change your life, just act the way you want to become, as crazy as that sounds. Famously, there are books and theories, all kinds of new ideas devoted to making us happier. But the results are usually inconclusive. Are we happier? Who knows? What if a certain answer was hiding in plain sight? What if you just acted happy so that you triggered the biological basis of joy? If anyone is acting happy, it's this guy. Madan Kataria was an overly serious doctor until he became the laughter guru of the world.
Every other day people tell me that this is all bullshit.
Dr. Kataria said that at first people didn't believe him when he said that you could make yourself laugh just by laughing. But now he's got a whole international movement to prove it.
This is the main difference between the Eastern culture and the Western culture. In the Western culture, people are very logical, very analytical. And when I introduced laughter yoga in the West, everybody asked me, how this, why this? So before they can take laughter yoga, I had to answer some questions. But in India, nobody asked me. They just laughed and they felt better.
Kataria's burgeoning movement has faced opposition due to its emphasis on faking your way to authentic laughter.
The easiest way to be happy is to act like a happy person. What I believe, that if you feel better, there is a biology behind it. It's possible. By changing your body behavior, you can change the release of certain neurotransmitters from the brain. So you can start from the mind, gets into the body. You can start from the body, it gets into the mind. Your mind is not under your control. Your body is under 100% in your control. Fake it until you make it. This rule is so fantastic. I love this.
Research has shown that laughter may open the door to a broad range of positive expressions, including smiling, cheering, and a sense of well-being. To prove that laughter can be triggered, Kataria demonstrated the gradient laugh. It starts with an acted laugh, where you laugh quietly, gradually getting louder and louder until you trigger real laughter. Arguably, laughter yoga, an international movement which involves tens of thousands of people in countries around the world, is based entirely on acted behavior.
You have faked the entire movement.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm the living example of your movie.
If acting happy can make you happy, can acting depressed make you depressed? Depression is considered to be at epidemic levels in modern society, according to widespread research. But here's the really crazy part. Could it be partially because of the way we act? Are we depressed because we're acting depressed?
When you look at how human beings evolved and how they learned historically, or even prehistorically, then for hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution, we were a mobile species. We actually moved on the land. We were nomadic hunter-gatherers in small groups. And all the learning happened in action.
Dr. Gabor Mate is famous for his books on addiction and disease. Increasingly, he believes our central human dilemma begins with a separation of our minds from our bodies. Mate says that when we disconnect from our bodies, we lose our physical potential for action.
With civilization comes more and more separation from the land and more immobilization. So immobilization immediately separates you from the mind from the body.
We're becoming lonelier, more isolated, completely sedentary. We live in our minds, and we've abandoned our bodies.
I have been depressed for a very long time. I've suffered with this disease, I think, for most of my life. When people would come up to me and say, "What's wrong?" or "Cheer up," or "Smile," I didn't realize that I had this look on my face. It wasn't something that I did deliberately.
Sarah had been frowning all her life, but she thought nothing of it until she became part of a revolutionary experiment where people wrestling with major clinical depression had their frown muscles paralyzed with Botox.
I don't tell a lot of people about it because it sounds sort of crazy. Because of the seeming, improbability, the strangeness of using a cosmetic treatment that people in Hollywood use to cure a mental illness or to help a mental illness. So I didn't expect it to work, and I was surprised when it did.
When we think Botox, we often think fake, but a personal experience by a plastic surgeon has inspired what may be a revolutionary treatment for depression.
I can't overemphasize the memories of being a little boy and seeing my mother just paralyzed from depression. But you just look at her face, you're like, holy cow, something's not good. As a doctor, couldn't help her. I got her the best I could get her. Nothing helped.
Years later, Finzi's memories of his mother's frowning face would cause him to link facial expressions with depression.
Maybe the expression is just not just the manifestation of the disease, but part and parcel of the disease.
Dr. Finzi believes that our cultural obsession with frowning and being overly serious may be driving us to depression.
There's a lot of research in the psychology literature showing that if you frown before you watch a cartoon, that you're going to think the cartoon is not as funny as if you were smiling. Your facial expressions are involved with your decision-making in life. Every time you frown, you take a more negative evaluation of whatever it is.
Dr. Finzi is pointing out a very strange aspect of reality. Human reality is likely distorted by the outward expression of our emotions. There is research to suggest that when you smile, you are more likely to notice more things to smile about. When we express fear, we are likely to notice things to be afraid of in our environment. Although it's subtle, when you frown, you may make your world more gloomy.
This is a way for us to get into your brain without going there. I mean, how else do I get to this part of your brain called the amygdala, which is the seat of negative emotions? There's no way to get in there, but these muscles are like hardwired in. Calm down the muscle, it then talks to the deep part of your brain. And that was it. Nice and easy.
I think that since starting Botox, my depressive periods have been shorter and less intense. It has been years since someone has said to me, "What's wrong?" or "Smile."
I had the ability to test the hypothesis because I already knew how to modify a facial expression by using Botox. I had no data when I first started. I just felt strongly that based on everything I had read, it's gonna work.
And what happened?
It worked.
If you can reverse engineer happiness and depression, is it possible you could reverse engineer confidence and pride? But where would you start? How about in a small village in Burkina Faso, Africa? It was here that a group of Canadian researchers first identified a human universal.
We had this group of people, it was an amazing research experience. Felt like we'd gone back in time 200 years. If you have any knowledge of Western culture, you're gonna know who Tom Cruise is. He was the biggest movie star at the time. And so we thought, well, if you don't know who the biggest movie star in the world is, if you can't recognize that person, you really don't have any connection with Western culture. And so we wanted to know people who've never seen a Western movie or magazine where you see these displays all the time, will they still see this display and say, yeah, that's pride, that person's feeling pride? Because if they do, that's really convincing evidence that what we're talking about is universal.
What Tracy is describing is the victory pose, an explosive, expansive posture that is so innate that even blind athletes will make this pose when they win races.
I didn't sort of come up with this from thin air. We see it every time we watch any kind of athletic event, right? And so all I did was think, okay, we know that people show this expression. The question is, when other people see it, do they recognize it as pride? And so that's what we did. We said, let's see if that's the case for pride. So,
And the answer was?
The answer was yes, yeah. The reason it matters is because, it kind of goes back to Ekman, right? So Paul Ekman said, these 5 or 6, depending how you count, facial expressions that go with emotions are universal.
The question was, are expressions and gestures innate, the same for all human beings, or are they the product of the culture you live in? We are a species where there really central features of our lives are similar across the world.
When he did that, that was kind of the first piece of evidence to say that emotions are not just culturally derived. They're not just something we learn from other people in our culture and then display and feel because we've been taught to. They're actually part of how we evolve. They're part of what makes us human. That's huge, right? From a scientific perspective, to know that these things that feel super subjective and really are very culturally embedded, that actually the reason we feel sad or angry when we do is because we evolved to do that it's adaptive for humans to have these emotions. They do things for us. They're functional. They've helped us survive. They've helped us reproduce. They've helped us become who we are, essentially.
Professor Tracy and her team proved that pride expressions, sometimes called the victory pose, are universal across all humankind. It is so powerful as a pose that we get it even when it's faked. But something far more revolutionary was to come. If we make the victory pose when we feel powerful, does the opposite apply? Do we become more powerful when we deliberately make this pose? This is arguably one of the most watched academic speeches of all time. In it, Harvard psychologist Amy Cuddy proposes a new kind of practice known as power posing. Just acting out these poses, she says, changes our body chemistry so that we both feel more powerful and are seen as more powerful.
When we feel powerful, we expand. When we feel powerless, we shrink. So does that affect how we feel and behave? Is it possible that our body language is affecting how we feel? It especially matters because we spend so much time like this, and that posture maps onto the posture of the depressed person, and we're spending a lot of time sitting like that. So even something that small could affect how we feel about ourselves. It's a very important dimension in sort of how we express power and status and dominance across the animal kingdom. So we know that alphas expand and take up more space.
Nature shows typically portray animals in violent confrontation. However, the reality is animals do an enormous amount of posturing, posing, to avoid the real implications of being injured. The animal world has far more theater than meets the eye.
The animal that has power or is trying to signal power is going to take up space because that has an effect on the other animal, right? The other animal perceives that, and you are now seen as more dominant and more threatening and stronger. What we find is that power changes the way you feel. So when you feel powerful, you also feel generally more confident, more optimistic, your mood is better, you see challenges not as threats, but as opportunities. It changes the way you think, so you are better at abstract thinking, other kinds of executive functions improve, you are more creative, you basically think better when you feel powerful.
Cuddy's research, however, has been embroiled in controversy because other scientists have been unable to replicate it.
Is there a controversy around power posing? Yes. Is there a controversy around the majority of psychological studies? Also, yes.
But Cuddy's power posing concept, built on work by Paul Ekman and Jessica Tracy, has caught on with the public. Amy Cuddy even power posed, all the way to The Late Show.
But a lot of people know you from these things called power poses, okay? Sure. What's a power pose?
Well, so if you won first place in a race and you crossed the finish line, what would you do with your body?
Woo!
Journalist Michaela McKenzie tried power posing for an entire month.
I learned to pay more attention to my body language and tweak it in situations where I needed a confidence boost or needed to appear more assertive. Those poses are actually giving you a very real confidence boost. I think it's very helpful to get the sense of confidence and authority that you do when you feel like you have physical dominance in a space, whether that's walking into a room and being your most aggressive physically or your most dominant physically. That definitely is an interesting way to think about it.
We conducted our own test of power posing. The effect was almost immediate.
Happy day. How you doing? Very good. Hello.
I became a different person, and I would soon be mistaken for the mayor of San Francisco.
I'm the mayor.
Despite the scientific controversy, on the street at least, it appeared to me that power posing certainly had power. If power posing makes you more powerful, then what happens if you do it day in, day out? Will that change who you are? If you think the Tom Cruise rescue is a single freak occurrence, you would be wrong. According to news reports, Cruise has done this at least 5 times. Cruise helped 2 young boys from being narrowly crushed by his own fans. He helped save a family on a burning boat off the coast of France. He came to the aid of a fallen photographer who was being trampled while taking pictures of him. And while bystanders looked on, Cruise leapt to the aid of a woman who had just been hit by a car. Some of Tom Cruise's real-life rescues are eerily similar to scenes from his movies. And if that's a pattern, it would stand to reason that other actors are doing the same thing.
Come with me if you want to live.
It turns out they are. Harrison Ford, who often plays heroes in his movies, rescued a gravely sick hiker by flying his own helicopter and landing on top of a mountain. Just like the movie XXX, actor Vin Diesel rode a motorcycle to the rescue. In this case, he pulled 2 kids out of a burning car on the California Expressway. Titanic star Kate Winslet was staying at Richard Branson's house on an island in the Caribbean when it was hit by lightning and set on fire. News reports would credit Kate Winslet for rescuing Richard Branson's mother.
Among the 20 people staying in the main house, actress Kate Winslet, who played a heroic role.
Actors playing heroes in movies, becoming heroes in real life? Is it a coincidence or a very strange pattern? Look deeper, and there's more. Actors Brad Pitt, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jennifer Lawrence, Clint Eastwood, Emily Blunt, and Matthew McConaughey were all involved in spontaneous rescues. This entertainment reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle noticed the trend and thinks it's a bizarre byproduct of Hollywood's action film culture.
Tom Cruise is credited with coming to people's aids after audio accidents twice, and I believe was both in 1996, the year of the first Mission Impossible.
I'm just living my life, you know, doing the best I can, just like everybody else. If someone needs help, I will definitely help them. No question.
Although Tom Cruise is a controversial figure, likely because of his involvement in Scientology, there is an undeniable pattern of rescues that begin when he becomes an action star, specializing in doing his own stunts. The stunts have been so exceptional and public that they've been the subject of international news. By her own admission, Emily Blunt was not a physical actress until working with Tom Cruise on Edge of Tomorrow, where suddenly she started doing her own stunts. In her next film, Into the Woods, Blunt rescued actress Meryl Streep from a potentially damaging fall.
One of the things that these celebrity, life-saving incidents kind of makes me wonder is, would I be able to do what they do? And I think that's what a lot of people wonder. It's sort of like, how would I react when I'm in that situation?
Harrison Ford is probably the embodiment of the Hollywood action hero. But he's had a number of public mishaps and rescues that seem to closely resemble scenes from his movies. Is it possible that roles such as the cavalier Indiana Jones and the reckless Han Solo have led to Ford's similar behavior in real life? Ford disregarded protocol at John Wayne Airport when he flew his plane only 87 feet over a loaded passenger jet.
One of them, the schmuck that landed on the taxi right in front of me.
And perhaps like a scene from Indiana Jones, he crash-landed a vintage plane on a golf course. Media reports connected Ford with the scenes from his movies.
Not too far from the image we have come to know of him in the movies, the adventure-seeking, larger-than-life characters who make a habit of death-defying feats of flight.
You know how to fly, don't you?
No. Do you?
Well, the other thing about it, too, is it's a huge risk for them to save lives, or to put themselves in dangerous situations. I mean, if you're, crawling into a burning car to pull people out, well, one, you may get killed, but the other thing is you may get disfigured, which would pretty much end your movie career.
That exact factor was at play after an incident that happened one night on a road in Hidden Valley, California.
That's Jamie Foxx's home, the actor. He hears a crash, the noise, the sound of a crash, looks out his window, realizes there's a vehicle that he can see that is on fire. There's no hesitation whatsoever. He goes running right over. Right about then is when this other fellow showed up, happened to be an off-duty EMT. He gets a pair of these like special scissors, okay, that are designed to do multiple things, hands it to Jamie. He breaks the window. The fire is getting bigger. They try to pull him out, and they can't get him out.
So what did Jamie Foxx say to your son?
He said, "You got to help me get you out, or I'm going to have to leave you here." He basically planted his feet against the whatever part of the truck on the inside and pushed. And when he did that, part of his body came out of the window, and then they were able to grab him and drag him out. Seconds later, after pulling him out, the cab started burning, and within a minute later, the whole truck it's gone the rest of the way. You could say it seems like a scene from a movie, that it was all just acted out.
You don't mean acting as in putting on a show?
Yes, he may very well had gone through that process in a movie as an actor. Or I think a lot of people, even though they may have training and they may have the ability to do something, if you allow fear to overtake you, then you won't do anything. You'll stand there. And in this case, watch a human being burned to death.
Although it might have seemed like a movie, it was clear that this experience was very real. However, part of this story stands out.
The EMT is a guy who's trained in emergency practice. Jamie Foxx is an actor. How come the EMT guy hands the scissors to Jamie Foxx?
I don't know.
The public sees a character and they see them in a movie do heroic deeds, and then they treat them outside of that role as if they were that character. And there's something called situational narcissism, which in a different context would be the idea that when you're treated a certain way and everyone treats you as if you're important, you start to feel very important. So the same could be true. The same effect could happen, I believe, when you play roles.
Are heroic actors just playing out the roles that we expect from them? World-renowned psychologist Philip Zimbardo leapt to fame in the early 70s after creating the notorious Stanford Prison Experiment, which demonstrated that people are changed by the roles they play.
Once you put a uniform on and are given a job to keep these people in line, you really become that person. Once you put on that khaki uniform, you put on the glasses, you take the nightstick.
Is it possible that playing the role of a hero in a movie creates the mental preparation for heroism? Zimbardo coined the concept of heroic imagination, a theory that heroes often have visual pictures of what they should do in their minds before they do it.
Actors that we all know and admire, whether or not we love them, have internalized a set of actions that can be triggered in the real world the same way as on a movie set.
If you physically practice rescuing someone from a car a dozen times in films, and maybe a dozen times in one scene with all the different takes, wow, you're absolutely it's going to be much easier for you to envision yourself as someone who does that.
Research shows that when people experience a traumatic incident in which they have no frame of reference, they often freeze. However, having pictures in your mind of possible actions you could take could break that freeze.
Actors, where they either do their own stunts or they have recreated dangerous situations where they took risks to help other people. The acting, that mentality stays with them. And so now it's almost like the call. Somebody yells. If you're on the set, what are you going to do? You're going to run over, challenge the guys, beat them up, do the judo trick. I think it becomes part of what you carry on in your imagination. It's not they walk around and say, "Oh, I could be a hero." It's simply a situation occurs. Maybe they have that movie playing all the time, and as soon as somebody says help, they are ready to help rather than look around who's going to help.
Actors like Tom Cruise and Harrison Ford may get the visual pictures of what they can do in a crunch from the very movies in which they act. It's quite possible that in these moments, they've become their roles. If it's true that acting brave might make you that way, what about acting miserable, evil, or violent? Will it make you that way? In 1958, English actor Gareth Jones would become famous for dying of a heart attack while portraying a man dying of a heart attack. More recently, Heath Ledger famously died after portraying a heavily disturbed, death-obsessed Joker in The Dark Knight. Actor Paul Walker, who played a key role in the Fast and the Furious franchise, movies which glorified street racing, died in a high-speed car accident. And Ricardo Medina, who played the Red Samurai Power Ranger, killed his roommate with a sword. Actor Corey Monteith was famous for portraying a bubbly, singing high school senior on the TV series Glee.
Just a small town girl.
But given that he had already had addiction issues, was Monteith affected by being cast as a drug addict in the movie Mechanic?
Is playing a certain role on screen or on stage, can that kind of predispose you to live or die the way your character did in a role that you embody? I can certainly see the possibility of that, but it wouldn't be a simple one-to-one correlation.
Dr. Gabor Mate studied Monteith's case and believes that when actors have already been marked by life experiences, it can predispose them to being impacted by the roles they play.
In Glee, Monteith would have been portraying a different aspect of himself, and it's the other side. It's the other side of the darkness. But both are real. And it's a question of which is reinforced by life. And that would have quite an impact on him, especially since both those roles represent powerful aspects of his personality. The effect is not purely that one of role. The effect is of role on a certain template that's already inside.
On July 13th, 2013 in Vancouver, Corey Monteith, age 31, would die alone of a combination alcohol and heroin overdose. If there is a pattern among the stars who rescue, it's that almost without exception, they are actors who do their own stunts. We are in an era where action rules, and science would seem to agree. New research shows that action almost always trumps thought. A study showed that students learned far quicker when a lesson was mimed to them than when the same lesson was studied from textbooks. Just the simple act of looking up can improve people's moods. Research also shows if you want to remember something, don't think it. Say it out loud. Research on our physical nature has led to a whole new field of science called embodied cognition. This is Professor George Lakoff, widely considered the father of embodied cognition. Lakoff revolutionized neuroscience with a claim that all thought is embodied, meaning the brain uses the body to think, and maybe the other way around. It was the practice of Tai Chi that helped Lakoff develop his theories of embodied cognition.
I came home one Saturday afternoon, looked in the window, I had some friends with me, looked in the window, and there were two guys rolling up our rugs. This was during a period when I was studying what is called staffs. Now, I happened to have my staff right next to the front door. I quickly open the door, push it open, jump in, grab this thing, and I grab it and I go like this, and I say, "Okay, you bastards, I'm gonna get you guys right now." And they ran.
They ran.
They ran.
Lakoff said that in this case, he didn't think about what to do. His body thought for him. Proof that the body and mind are one.
All thought is physical. Thought is physical. That's the main thing. Think of it this way. If there were no connections between the brain and the body, suppose there were no connections at all, and all thought occurred there, what could you think about?
Brainy things.
You could not even do that. I mean, you would be nothing. You wouldn't see anything, hear anything, feel anything. There'd be nothing to think about. You know, the fact that you think about stuff means it's embodied.
Author Josh Davis put the theories of embodied cognition to the test when he opened a lab devoted to it at Columbia University.
I started the lab because we are not paying, in my opinion, enough attention to a huge potential source of input into what it means to be a human.
What Davis is talking about is your body. From our earliest days, we are taught not to move, that we are minds carried around by bodies. But embodied cognition says that our bodies change our thoughts. They may even create our thoughts, as they change the way we perceive the world. What we do actually changes what we see. People who are in the middle of laughing often think what they're looking at is funnier. People who are dancing report the music is better while they're dancing. And people who throw tantrums often think the world is an angry place. This is an entirely new form of scientific inquiry, as if our own bodies were some kind of undiscovered territory.
When we smile, we tend to be happier. There have been a series of studies showing that your facial expressions do influence your emotional experience. the tendency to approach something, it leads you to like it more. When you're avoiding something, moving away, you tend to like it less.
So if I was avoiding what you're saying by moving back, I'm going to be less interested in if I was stepping forward. So you go, that's interesting.
That is interesting. Weirder still, the angle at which we look at people affects how we see them. When we look up at people, our feelings are different than from when we look down at them. Although we think our brains are neutral, Davis said that making skeptical facial expressions makes whatever we're looking at less credible, while a more open, wide-eyed expression makes everything more believable. Just saying the word wow in a dramatic way, even without reason, will sometimes make us feel like something exciting is happening, even if nothing is happening at all.
Wow is one of those, it's one of those words that's more directly tied to an emotional response. Wow.
This same principle extends to the whole body.
What happens to me if I give the thumbs up, or if I put up a different finger that sends a very different type of message?
Right. For example, if I was walking towards you and you went, hey,
yeah,
nice to see you, that's changing the way you think about me. And also if you walked up to me and you went, hey, are there chemical changes in my body that is changing the way I see things?
So we know that these gestures influence the ways that we think and feel. Some of the ideas are that it's priming, so it's just bringing up the idea that the movement is associated with these ideas, and so the movement conjures the idea of hostility or friendliness, and then that influences you. Some of the other posture research has to do with how this kind of hunched posture affects sort of feeling more down and depressed. If you see someone and you look at them, they really look down, they really look depressed, that kind of a posture can influence sad feelings or more of a kind of a depressed affect.
Is this kind of like a loser posture, is that what you're saying? Or that's how on the street we would call that a loser?
Yeah.
But if I walk down the street, shoulders down, neck down, is that what it is? Shoulders down, neck down?
Shoulders down, neck down, kind of and there's, that kind of thing should actually influence how you feel. So if I'm all tense, that's a different feeling than if I'm kind of relaxed. We have these underlying assumptions about a separation between mind and body that we should change. We are our bodies. There's no separation.
If the way we act can make us cheerful, interested, or angry, could the way we act also be making us sick? A new theory challenges medical convention about the nature of chronic disease. Is it possible that chronic illnesses could be provoked by our emotional and behavioral realities?
In my family practice, who got sick and who didn't get sick wasn't accidental. There were certain patterns there, emotional and psychological patterns, where I saw multiple generations of people at all ages. Then I worked in palliative care, and all the people that were dying of ALS or cancer or sometimes chronic heart disease and so on, they had certain personality patterns that they're inescapable. If your eyes were open, you can just notice them. And based on both my medical experience, observations, and on tremendous amount of research, emotional factors play a huge role in chronic illness especially. Multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, colitis, Crohn's disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, ALS, almost any chronic condition. These conditions represent a real split of mind and body in the individual, where they really ignore their own needs.
This flies in the face of conventional thinking, which says that chronic illness is either of medical or unexplained origin. Matte's theory says that people prone to chronic illness may engage in a dramatic pattern of ignoring or negating their body's physical needs.
For the sake of pursuing certain roles, they end up not saying no to situations that are actually bad for them. They end up taking on situations that are stressful for them, physiologically stressful for them, but because of their identification with the role of the helper and the role of the nice person and the role of the person who's always there for everybody else, and the rigid and the compulsive identification with their jobs rather than their personal needs, the body eventually says no where they didn't. When we forget how to say no, we end up taking on stressful lives, which then result in physiological wear and tear on the body. And so my contention is that when we don't know how to say no, the body can often say so in the form of illness. If people ask me, did how I live my life have something to do with the onset of my cancer, I say yes, it did. If they say, are you blaming me for my cancer, I say no. I'm not saying you deliberately caused it. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm not saying you're to blame. You were programmed in a certain way that you've had no choice but to act out, because you can't separate mind from the body. Physiologically, there's no separation whatsoever. Yes, those behaviors and those emotional patterns, those social relationships have in fact contributed to the onset of your disease. But I can certainly say that there have been people with significant chronic illness written off by Western medicine who have made complete recoveries through the agency of agency and through dropping the role and finding themselves underneath the role.
Is Aola Baker a case in point? Baker, a Vancouver-based photographer, says she had become lost in life. But with a single act, she changed her role and possibly herself.
Kind of a point in my life where everything just seemed to not be going well for me. I was depressed, had a breakup that was really rough and unhealthy, and my self-esteem was really low, and I kind of just emotionally shut down. And I realized that I really didn't want to feel like that anymore, so I decided to make some drastic changes, and I sold everything I owned. I sold my car, I packed everything I had into 2 bags. I went traveling for a couple of years to try and reconnect to myself and figure out what it was that I actually wanted to feel and how I wanted to express myself in the world. And during that time period, I would do jumping photos with friends, and it would always alter the way that I felt. One of the days I was doing jumping photos with a friend, we laughed a lot, and we realized how good we felt after doing it, how it really shifted the way that we felt emotionally and physically, and we were just altered, our states were altered. Other people, like watching us, were starting to do it, and it was this great ripple effect. Yeah, actually I really want to do that. Like, I want to feel joy, and I want to share that with people, and I want to be creative and play and interact and really connect. I thought if I did hundreds of these photos and they were shared with the world, it would be like the same contagious effect of you go to a soccer game or something and someone does goal and everybody jumps up together, and it's like in unity, like our reaction is to jump in celebration. It's almost like I was altering my state into joyfulness by physically jumping into the air and lifting my hands up and it's like I was lifting my emotions up just through the physical act. And I just kind of learned that as I went. And then later I actually saw that there were studies proving that jumping is good for your body and it's good for your health. So it's like, I didn't know that this was called the victory pose, but it really makes sense to me. But I just had this idea that I wanted to do this as a project, and I just thought, if I could travel around the world taking photos of people jumping for joy, because this is such an innate emotion that we all feel and we can all connect to. I had met a woman that owned a building in the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is one of the worst down and out parts of Canada. A lot of drug use, a lot of homelessness. And of course I said yes right away, even though I had no idea how to make a mural and I had never even thought about it, but it made sense with what I wanted to do. So I just went in there and started doing a mural, and all these people in the alleyway were literally doing heroin and crack and all kinds of stuff right beside me. And these are the least likely people that I thought would have a reaction to this. But surprisingly, they were excited about it too. And not only did they want to be a part of the project and they helped me to make the mural, they actually jumped and took part in the project. And they had the same excitement, the same reaction that everybody else did. And I realized that this is something that we all feel and crave and desire. And no matter what, even if you are depressed, it will physically alter you to jump for joy. Yeah, the mural came down unexpectedly. And And it was a bit heartbreaking because so many people's energy had gone into this, and it had such a positive impact on this down and out laneway with all these people, so I was a bit heartbroken.
Baker's mural disappeared. But perhaps she had already proven that on the street, jumping for joy could be contagious. If acting can empower us and perhaps even heal us, can it enter what might be the most challenging domain of them all?
I think it's true that I have, in a sense, hacked love. Love is always seen as something so mysterious, something beyond our control. I am quite sure that love doesn't have to be mysterious, and that we can take control over the love we experience in our lives.
Most of us believe that love is not in our control, a matter of fate decided by the stars. Our goal is to find our one true soulmate, and then love magically happens. Epstein's study of successful arranged marriages, an idea most Westerners find troubling, revealed something surprising. In arranged marriages, people felt like they had no choice, so they practiced loving behaviors, in some cases transforming their partners into soulmates.
Some people look at my work and think that I'm advocating arranged marriage. Okay, I have never advocated arranged marriage. I have looked at arranged marriages in which love has been built over time so I can better understand how that works.
Epstein believes he knows how to make just about anyone fall in love.
If you gave me 10 couples, I got to the point where I was pretty sure I could get at least 6 of them to fall deeply in love.
If Dr. Epstein had hacked love, as he says, there was a way to find out. To try some of Dr. Epstein's love exercises right here, right now. His first exercise is called soul gazing, which is based on an ancient tantric intimacy practice. Rather than follow instinct to look away, people look deep into each other's eyes.
Well, in soul gazing, you look into their eyes, except that you try to hold that gaze, and this person is trying to hold the gaze with you, and that's all there is to it.
Unexpected eye contact between mammals is normally threatening. However, research on eye gazing suggests that prolonged eye contact, even acted, produces feelings of compassion, empathy, and connection, due to the power of mirror behaviors. Studies on couples in love show that they mirror each other. Eye gazing means acting like lovers. Could that be why eye gazing, even done deliberately, creates feelings of love?
I love doing this because for me, it works. I mean, I started to feel like it was the first time I had ever actually looked at you. And of course, I've been, in some sense, looking at you for 2 hours, but I started to feel that more and more and more that I was actually seeing you now for the very first time. That was pretty weird.
Weirder yet, Epstein was inspired to develop his next love exercise based on experiences in his own love life.
We are so inept when it comes to relationships and love. It's pathetic. I was in a relationship many, many years ago in which my girlfriend at the time was a wonderful person who had a wonderful daughter. And she was trying for 2 years to get me to say, I love you to her. And I wouldn't say it. Now, This was a long, long time ago. I mean, and looking back, I say to myself, what an idiot I was. What an incredible idiot I was. This was a wonderful, wonderful human being who adored me. And I liked her very, very much. And what was stopping me? Why could I not say those words? And looking back, I now realize if I had just said the damn thing, if I had just said, you know what, I love you too, I have a feeling there would have been this rush of emotion for me. I have a feeling it would have opened up floodgates of feelings that I just was holding in.
We took Professor Epstein to a nearby beach where we attempted love hacks with people who had never met before. Epstein introduced his killer exercise, the I love you game. In this love hack, people must say I love you to each other. The only rule is they must say it differently each time.
I love you.
I love you, friend.
According to Epstein, the game often starts with awkward, uncomfortable feelings.
I love you.
But it often produces unexpected, real feelings of love. This is due to the power of vulnerability.
In relationships, one person or the other is usually holding back because the notion is, we get this notion from our movies and our novels, that if you cross over into that world, everything's going to change and there's a lot of risk involved. Because when you say those words, it means a lot in our culture. And unfortunately, the way that plays out is that we tend not to say those words. The more you say those things, the more you'll mean those things.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
Okay, so that totally, whoa. So I got this little tingling thing going on over here. If two people are saying that to each other regularly, it really is very healthy for a relationship.
Is it okay to say that after a particularly good interview?
Yes.
I love you.
And I love you, Albert. I feel closer to you than I did before.
By faking it until you make it, it looks like you could get more of what you want out of life. More happiness, more confidence, and maybe even more love. And according to Professor Epstein, this is based on solid psychological science. However, I would then meet someone who would turn this whole thing on its head.
I had read an article in Scientific American Mind by Robert Epstein, and I realized that the exercises that he said were scientifically inspired, that were pretty much guaranteed to increase a couple's sense of vulnerability and lead to love. I looked at them, and essentially they were games I'd been doing since I was a 12-year-old going to theater camp.
Hold on, let's get this straight. Epstein's breakthrough theories and exercises on how to hack love are based on dozens of psychological behavioral studies done at universities around the world.
And they're all things we've been doing in theater for hundreds of years. This is Theater 101.
And in fact, Amy Cuddy's revolutionary power posing science is also a very common theatrical exercise known as status, which are theatrical exercises where actors train at playing different roles of power.
They're sort of the bread and butter of acting training. And so I thought, this is interesting. Science and theater are actually telling us a lot of the same things. And so the first was soul gazing, which I think we talked about. It's the looking deeply into your partner's eyes. Well, Epstein explained soul gazing as a situation where two people are given permission to gaze into each other's eyes. We had one called Fall in Love, and this is literally falling in love, where you stand there and then you fall into the arms of your partner. And I mean, honestly, I can't even think of a theater class that hasn't done that. It's a trust exercise. And they're all things we've been doing in theater for hundreds of years.
Vanderschaft doesn't question the revolutionary aspect of Professor Epstein's or Cuddy's research. She believes they're both onto something. She's just amazed that so much of their breakthroughs are based on fundamental acting techniques. And if they're right, shouldn't actors be falling in love?
A showmance is a term that describes the romance of people that's developed while they're doing a show. My understanding is that showmances occur in every level of theater, be it community theater and movie work through Broadway. It's a term that describes the reality that I think a lot of performers face, which is this sort of falling in love every show they do. So my theory is that people who are doing these exercises regularly, people in theater, rehearsal, training, etc., should be falling in love. So I wanted to see if that was true. And I created a survey. I asked, for example, have you ever fallen in love with someone while working on a production? And 78% of the respondents said yes. And what I thought was really interesting is I asked where in the process they developed these feelings, and 93% said during rehearsal. And it's during rehearsal that you're doing these exercises that are most similar to the ones that Dr. Epstein discusses in his article.
Okay, action. It's definitely the same process. It's exactly the same process where each person is made to feel more and more vulnerable. The defenses are getting lower and lower and lower, and each person is becoming more needy, and then there are these moments where finally they start to support each other. They start to admit that, hey, I actually like you. And that little admission just, pow, and the bond just goes like that.
Through doing these exercises, what that does is it feels like love, and it is love.
In the entertainment industry, people are often put through exercises that are exactly like the exercises that I recommend to people who want to fall in love. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a great example of what I've been talking about. It's a whole industry in which people are constantly being made vulnerable to each other, and in fact, that's the key to good acting.
Not only do actors go through the motions of being lovers, but due to rehearsal, repeat these behaviors over and over again. Actors are often eye-gazing by default. And in fact, the classic love scenes of Hollywood cinema all include powerful moments of eye-gazing.
No. He's looking at you, kid.
Aside from an apparent cocktail of love-producing exercises, actors also share something else which drives bonding.
I think the nature of theater and movie work is inherently filled with risk. And that's what's exciting about it. When you go through risk together, you are closer and you will have that bond probably forever.
Even where people know it's not real, which is odd, it strengthens the bond. And I don't think that happens very much in many professions. I don't think it happens if you're in the pharmacy profession, let's say. But in that industry, I think that will happen. I think you're going to be put through exercises that I consider to be emotional bonding exercises.
If just repeating the phrase, "I love you," promotes real love, could this explain why so many actors fall in love on the job?
I love you.
Actors are put into the situation all the time where they have to act like they're in love. Well, guess what? If you act like you're in love, that creates love.
Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are certainly one of the more famous showmances.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a great example because, these actors at some point gaze at each other. These actors go through all kinds of physical crazy stunts together. These actors fall in love, and then in fact, a serious relationship results.
I think playing the part of being in love can definitely put someone at risk of actually falling in love.
And so it's no wonder that their relationships are often very unstable. They end up cheating on each other right and left. It's the nature of the industry. It actually immerses people in this process that I've been studying for a long time. So what do you expect?
Because of its obvious power and the rise of the science of embodied cognition, could acting be the next transformational health trend? It could help us become happier. It might help us become more confident, even brave. And it might help us find and deepen love. And it's actually very easy to learn how to act. But there is one catch, and it's a big one. Most people are afraid of acting. But why?
I think people are afraid of acting because we have this sense that we're supposed to be our authentic selves, and that if we put on anything that is not that somehow we are lying.
But our fear of acting could be something even more basic. These researchers who study acting explain it with the theory of mind.
When we're very, very young, we're not afraid of acting, taking on roles, role playing. We love it. All children do. They can be a dog or a big cat or a truck or any numbers of things. They can do them all. And then around 6 years of age, they start to notice that people are looking at them, and those people have a mind that's thinking about them, maybe not as positively as they were obliviously unaware of just a year earlier. So many, many people who once loved doing that are now self-conscious because they know others are looking at them. And that socializing fear of shame is paralyzing.
Paralyzing, maybe. But here's the twist. Even if we've lost our childhood love of role play and acting, aren't we all acting anyway?
Welcome to the movie.
This professor says that we are all acting. We just may not know it.
Shakespeare said all the world's a stage and we're but the players. What he meant by that is that we're constantly participating in a play. This is one big movie. We're all acting, right? All the time, and there's no way to stop. All these people, they're all acting in a play, a collective hallucination that makes this society possible.
All life is drama, says Hamer, and we all find ourselves playing roles.
You might be a store owner, you're a police officer, you're a firefighter. Every little thing you do is acting, it's drama. From little gestures to big things, small things, everything you do is acting. That's what Shakespeare means by all the world's a stage. You could take a little bit of what Tom Cruise is doing when he films these action movies into your own life by recognizing that if you adopt certain power poses, certain body language, if you do certain things with your body in the world, that will shape your experience of the world. Look at Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Well, it's significant that Tom Cruise, he does his own stunts, but he also does them out in public areas, in the middle of cities, with lots of people watching. So he's essentially, in that situation, not only making a movie, he's getting everybody else to become extras in his movie. And so he's acting the part of a hero in a real public place. Very much kind of laying bare how much, right, this is all a movie. You know, it's funny that people are pathologically afraid of acting, but we can't avoid it. The only difference between you and Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise isn't afraid to act in every sense of the word.
There might be a fairly outrageous concept here, that you can actually change who you are by the way you act. And that's something that we can control. But most of us, it appears, are afraid to act. So we don't know what our real potential is. The science is also controversial, unproven, and new. What about a public test? What if you went to a place which would be a very tough sell? This is Idea City, a conference dedicated to scholars, intellectuals, and brains. If anyone is out of their bodies, these people are. Could they be triggered by the fundamental principles of innate embodied cognition? Would they feel it? Would they do it? Would they act? It was showtime.
I'm here today to introduce what I believe could be an entirely new form of exercise. But first, before I start, I just want to charge Idea City with discrimination. Idea City is described as Canada's premier meeting of the minds. Are we just minds? Are we merely brains on sticks? No, I would recommend right now that you look down. What is that? What is that? Yes, that's your body. There's a whole new field of science which looks at the way the body feedbacks to the brain. So I'd like to ask you to do a simple test, an exercise. And if you can, I would like you to assume this posture. If you can just put your hands, cross your arms, beautiful. By holding this position, you become more skeptical. You're probably thinking this is a crock. Okay, now try this expression then. Here's an entirely different expression. Yes, open your eyes wide. Now the second step of this is open your mouth, drop your mouth open. Wow, now you find he's starting to make sense. I understand. Everything becomes believable in this posture. And if you add in the simple term, the simple word, wow, you will find you have entered a moment where something important seems to be happening, even if nothing important is happening at all.
I then asked the audience if they wanted to test the theories of embodied cognition.
And here's the twist. A study, or a researcher, in New Jersey named Sarah Vanderschaaf looked at these fields of science and discovered something kind of strange. That all these exercises were exactly similar to things that happen in Theater 101. I would like to propose an entirely new exercise modality that is based on acting. Yes. This exercise is called the I love you game. And let me explain how it works. It's based on the idea that the actual expression, I love you, is very taboo. I love you. Thank you. Beautiful. You gotta keep going. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Now you're gonna turn to somebody next to you. Yes. I love you. I love you. Beautiful! Okay, now the Wonder Woman pose. So, hands on hips, head up, shoulders out, projecting power. Now, there's a formal study at the University of Michigan where they studied this particular gesture. Yes, that this changes your brain chemistry to feel that whatever is in front of you is much more positive. Thank you. Hey, you're beautiful. Thank you. Now, there's another gesture that was heavily studied, and I'm sure you're familiar with this gesture, and that is this gesture here. Research at the University of Michigan suggests by making this gesture, we will change what is in front of us to become more negative in terms of our viewpoint. So, let's see if that's true. Let's conduct an experiment. Now, this is merely an exercise. So first, you take your right arm, let's say, you take your right arm and you extend it like this. Now, as you gesture like this, you will find a certain part of you is activating, hostile, primal. In fact, I recommend doing it with both hands.
That's when I realized it was working. These people might be brainiacs, but right now, they were in their bodies. You might see a room full of people giving me the finger, but I saw a room full of people acting.
Victory pose! Yes! Wait, but wait. We're being judged. Look, there's cameras watching everything we do. Adults judging us for acting like children. So, our final gesture is a rejection. Will be a powerful rejection of that feeling of judgment. Yes! This is it! Yeah! Take this! Judge this! Yes! I love you! Judge this! Yes! Thank you. Thank you very much.
If Shakespeare is right, and all the world is a stage, here's an idea. We can act when we want to, and acting on positive human universals might improve our lives. Laughter yoga continues to spread, and new research shows that less frowning may make us happier. And so does, it appears, jumping for joy.
Out of the blue, I got a call from someone in Palm Springs. They asked me to come down to California, and here I am. I'm jumping for joy again.
Tom Cruise continues to perform outrageous stunts in public. Harrison Ford rescued someone else. And a professor at Stanford has come out with a new book that suggests practiced heroism could make people more brave. And so it's possible we can rehearse our way to better lives. And maybe it's a good idea to listen to our bodies, because we are our bodies. And although it's good to be truthful and authentic, sometimes it's worth noting that it's okay to do a little bit of acting.
Hey, this is all fake.